Good afternoon, my name is Kaylee Carroll, and today we will be learning basic carpentry skills using a miter saw. To begin, you need basic safety equipment before you even go into the ag mech shop, before you start your project. What you'll need is safety glasses, ear protection, long pants, a tight shirt, long hair needs to be tied up, and you need closed-toed shoes. Once you have all your safety equipment and your safety glasses are on, you need to make sure you have the proper material. The material we will need for this project will be a speed square, a piece of scrap wood because we're practicing cutting, a tape measure, and a pencil. We will just be making a basic straight cut on the miter saw, a 12-inch cut, and to begin that we will need our tape measure. Once we have our tape measure, we need to measure from the end of the board 12 inches. Once you have found 12 inches on your board, you need to mark where you will be cutting. Once you've made this little mark, you need to take your speed square. Now, your speed square can go many different ways, but you want the back of the speed square pressed hard onto the board so you can make a straight line where you made the mark. Just like that. Since we marked on this side of the board and measured it 12 inches from the left to my right, we need to mark a little arrow to remind us that when we are cutting on the miter saw, the blade needs to be on the outer side of the line. Once you completely mark your board, it should look like this. And you should know that when you go cut, you should always have the blade on this outer side. Now we will move on to the miter saw and learn safety about the miter saw before we cut. Now, since we're moving over to the miter saw, before we even touch it or start doing anything with it, these are some basic safety things that we need to know. Never turn on the miter saw unless instructed to by your instructor. Always pre-plan your cuts. Just like we did, we measured, we marked, we made sure everything was okay and what we wanted before we moved to the miter saw. When cutting on the miter saw, always take your time. Never rush, and make sure you go all the way down and come all the way up with the blade. When the blade is running, never touch it. Never touch the blade at all unless you contact your teacher and they tell you to do so, but unless they tell you to do that, don't touch it. Now, we are going to go over the parts of a 12-inch miter saw. So we begin, this is the dust bag. This is the on and off switch. This is the guard. Never remove the guard. This is pretty much what keeps you safe while using this type of machinery. This is the fence. This fence helps keep the board flush, so you don't have to hold it on both sides. Now, before making a straight cut, you need to make sure that your miter saw is set to 0. Before we use the miter saw, we're just going to go over a couple of basic parts that we will be using today. To begin, this is the on and off switch. It has a safety where you have to press the top part and the bottom part in order for it to turn on. This is the dust bag. In the dust bag, it just pretty much picks up all this extra sawdust. The fence, this helps keep the board flush in order to make sure your cut is even and accurate the way you want to. Now, for today's cut, we will be making a straight line cut like we marked here. In order to do this, the bevel adjustment must be set to 0. So before making any type of cut that's straight, you need to make sure it's set to 0. For any other type of angles, you can adjust it how you want to, but for today, just a basic straight cut set to 0. While we go to cut our straight line, we need to make sure that we push our board up to the fence, just like this. Once we do this, we need to make sure that our blade is on the outside of the line that we marked. Like we did, we made an arrow so that we are sure that we're cutting on the right side. To do this, you want to come up here and press the release And you need to adjust the blade so it's on a little bit outside of the line that we marked. So right there is good. Maybe a little bit more. Right there. Okay, now that we do that, we need to release and come over here and clamp down our board. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. You're ready to cut. This helps us not have to hold the board. It keeps us safer while we're making these cuts. So here we go. Once this is done, we need to unclamp our board. And if done correctly, this is how your cut should look. We can go back over here and measure it. And it should measure out to 12 inches on the dot. Now, while making this cut, I made sure that you got to see the cut, but you didn't get to see how I was standing. When cutting anything, you need to make sure that you're standing away from the machine, your weight is balanced, and that you kind of stand away from it and not on top over the machine. This is for safety reasons.